All right, guys. Our time is running out. We got nothing else. Do you guys know what song this is? You know why I chose it? Anybody know? Think about it. Listen. I'm going to tell you. That song, for those of you who might be internet video gamers, how perfect for our class. That is a rap that was written for the video game The Last of Us. And there's a Last of Us 2 as well. I thought that would be perfect for our last video of the semester, besides class business, which is next, because here we are. We have made it to the very end. Let's give ourselves, that's not a word. Let's give ourselves a hand, guys. We made it. I thought I would be poetic, and I'd have both a song about The Last of Us and also coming from an internet video game, because after all, haven't we been talking about the internet gaming addiction controversy? So I thought I would end the semester with a little symbolism. All right, so I want to leave you thinking about the following. On slide number 14, I ask, can something that has become a norm in society be considered an addiction? I want you to really think about this. Not only is the use of smartphones, tablets, computers, the internet, classroom management systems, Google sites, YouTube, you name it. Not only are those things completely interwoven into the fabric of our daily existence, but some people would say, in fact, it is a requirement that today's living in work and in life, you need these things to function adequately, to be successful. So the question has arisen, does it make sense to turn something that is pervasive in our culture and even required in many of our work lives? Is it sensible to call that potentially an addiction that not only can be diagnosed, but can be treated and treated by private treatment centers like those I've introduced you to in today's class, where people are making, yes, profit. Think about the ethics of that. But also, if you've ever taken my Psych 219, Psychology of Mental Illness class, you will know at the beginning of the semester, one of the things we talk about is, how do we even begin to define mental illness? What does mental disorder even mean? How do we discern normal variations in human behavior from something that is, quote, clinically relevant, diagnosable, and in need of clinical intervention and treatment? And one of the first things I talk about in that class are the 4 Ds. The 4 Ds: deviance, dysfunction, distress, and danger. Now let's think about these with regard to this proposed internet addiction category. Well, the deviance model of defining mental disorder is statistically based. Basically looks at a population and says, okay, well, most people do this. Here's the curve. Think about the normal curve, right? Most people are within this 2 standard deviations of the average, with even more being 1 standard deviation away from the average. And then people in the tails are doing things that are much rarer, much less frequent. From a purely deviant standpoint, then, we call what the average does and people within that, 1 standard deviation away do normal, and the stuff that's in the less frequent statistical portions of the curve, we call that, quote, different or deviant. Well, if we use that model, internet addiction doesn't make any sense. Smartphone addiction doesn't make any sense, right? Gaming addiction doesn't make any sense. Because from a deviance perspective, we're taking something that is more prevalent and more frequent than not in our culture and saying, let's pathologize it. All right, so let's move on to distress and dysfunction then. A distress criteria suggests something might require clinical intervention and be problematic from a clinical standpoint if the individual, him or herself, who is experiencing that behavior and any thoughts or emotions associated with that behavior is feeling subjective upset, discomfort. It's not about what anyone else does or how many other people do it. The idea is if it's something that creates discomfort for you, That's clinically relevant. Okay, well, that could make sense with internet use. Maybe people feel they're using it too much or for purposes that they're not comfortable with. But is that necessarily a disorder then? Because there could be a lot of things people are spending their time on to a degree to which they feel maybe subjectively uncomfortable. And yet, we might not necessarily pathologize that and call that a problem. Let's think about dysfunction. Dysfunction has to do with whether or not what you're doing, what you're feeling, what you're thinking is disrupting your ability to carry out your life roles. So your work life roles, your home life roles, your relationship roles, etc. From that perspective, internet use, smartphone use, gaming use, all of that would be considered clinically relevant and problematic and dysfunctional then if it's interfering with somebody's ability to work or get their work done or focus at work, or their inability to get schoolwork done or attend class or do well in school, or it's interfering with their relationships like that survey showed about smartphone use and relationships. The only problem with this criteria then is, couldn't it apply to lots of things people refer to as their passion? What if you have a music passion, you're a passionate musician, and you're spending hours and hours and hours and hours practicing, performing, to the exclusion of maybe spending as much time with your family or your friends? Or is that a disorder? One might argue the passion is dysfunctional in that definition, but do we really want to start calling passions disorders? Finally, we have danger, the 4 Ds, right? Deviance, distress, dysfunction, and danger. Danger self, danger other. By this we mean, is the behavior someone is engaging in or the thoughts somebody is having or the emotions someone is feeling making it more likely they're going to harm themselves or create risks for harm or harm other people? Now, if we think about this one in terms of the internet, it wouldn't really fit unless something someone's doing through the internet is enhancing feelings of suicidal ideation, right? That's thoughts of self-harm, thoughts of harming oneself, killing oneself. If it's enhancing violence towards others, if it's enhancing homicidal thinking, that would be the only way it would make any sense. But that would likely not be unique to internet use per se. So I want you to really end the semester thinking about this. When we think about health, of course, we need balance. Our lives need balance psychologically, socially, spiritually, right? And our physical body needs to be healthy. That's that biopsychosocial spiritual model that frames the entire field of health psychology. But where does normal variation in healthful behavior begin and end? And where do we decide that things that become a part of our culture can nonetheless be health defeating? And does it make any sense to call things addictive that are part of our normal human functioning? Food, eating, sex, exercise, and now internet. I want to leave you with a thought. On the slide, I have a picture of Einstein and a quote. In this quote, he said, "It has become appallingly obvious that our technology has exceeded our humanity. We have spent the last moments of our semester together talking about internet addiction and specific forms of internet addiction." Here, Einstein talks about technology exceeding our humanity. I want you to think about what that means to you in today's technological culture. Of course, Einstein didn't say it today. I want you to think about how that applies to today. Do you believe that's the case? Has technology exceeded our humanity in today's culture, in today's world? What does that mean for you? And with that, I want to say thank you for an incredible semester. Even though we had to do half of our semester remotely, we had to use the very technology we're debating in our class today and last time. I want to thank you so much for sticking with me, for watching these videos, for trying to remain engaged, for juggling your work. You guys are rock stars. And although I have missed the face-to-face, there's nothing, no computer, no graphic, no soundtrack can substitute for the energy of a room full of smiling faces, excited faces, faces ready to learn. But I want to tell you that I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know every one of you when we were together in the same room and continuing to try to have a dialogue across a screen and trying to make it as much like the real me as you saw in class. Please stay healthy. Please stay safe. Good luck on finals, and you meet me on our last class business slide.